some years ago, a friend of mine asked me to come to just visit one of the PeaceWorks Kansas City board meetings, and I thought, well, why not, you know? And that was about 7 years ago, and it's kind of been very active since then, and it's been a real blessing. Lament and sorrow, hope for tomorrow. This theme for tonight's commemoration is adapted from a haunting yet hopeful song with these lines. Give thanks for laments and psalms of sorrow that release our needed tears, that help us reach tomorrow and look beyond our fears. Lament and sorrow, hope for tomorrow. I commend you each for being here tonight. You've chosen to face into the horrors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki rather than look away, as our nation mostly has done for the past 72 years. It's not easy to think the unthinkable or speak the unspeakable, especially in our officially optimistic society. We so often prefer to look on the bright side, ignoring the shadow side of ourselves and of our nation. When we first dropped the bomb, many of us were so happy that it helped end World War II that we didn't think much about the omnicidal threat we unleashed. And it's no wonder. From the very beginning of the atomic age, our military and political leaders have hidden from public view the true horrors of August 6th and August 9th, confiscating photos and films, suppressing the press, whatever was needed to keep public opinion from turning against the shiny new weapons of mass destruction and mass intimidation. That practice still continues. But tonight, we openly lament the global fallout of the atomic bombs these past 7 decades. We lament the some 120,000 souls of Hiroshima and Nagasaki who died instantly, the tens of thousands who died later from injuries and from radiation poisoning, and the countless others who even today suffer from illness and trauma. We lament the more than 500 atmospheric nuclear tests which have poisoned our good Earth and our very bodies in ways that will not be known for years to come, making each of us unwitting and unwilling subjects in a global lab experiment. We lament the profligate waste of human resources that have been squandered on nuclear weapons, estimated at more than $10 trillion since the beginning of the nuclear age. Even today, with the Cold War supposedly over, the global outlay for nuclear weapons is some $12 million an hour. $12 million an hour. With half that amount, it's estimated we could eliminate extreme poverty worldwide. And further, we lament the way nuclear weapons have set our moral compasses spinning. I remember my stepdad's stories about patrolling the West Coast during World War II, watching for Japanese submarines. We were fearful of even a single submarine attack, especially one that might target civilian populations like San Francisco or Seattle. Yet, where we once worried about even a single submarine armed with a few torpedoes, we now have become the enemy, as Walter Wink would say. With 14 nuclear-armed submarines, together carrying more than 1,000 nuclear warheads, each warhead 5 to 20 times more powerful than the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Do the math. That's at least 5,000 Hiroshimas. And that's just one of our 3 delivery systems, by land, by sea, and by air. These submarines are on secret patrol 24/7, capable of laying off any shore in the world, a so-called deterrent, holding the global population hostage to the threat of nuclear annihilation. For real? We think somehow we are deterring the use of nuclear weapons by championing to the nearly 5,000 in our arsenal? And we think that somehow we're keeping the good faith promise we made to the world nearly 50 years ago to reduce and eliminate nuclear weapons, while at the same time budgeting $1 trillion in the next 30 years to modernize the very weapons that we promised to eliminate. And we think that we're justified in using any means possible to stop other nations from joining our exclusive nuclear club, calling them rogue nations. Don't you have to wonder at a certain point who the rogue nations really are? Much of the world has resigned itself to the necessary evil of nuclear weapons, but many are waking up. These weapons are not necessary, they're just evil. They do not in any way fit the just war criteria of proportionality. How could nukes be proportional when they're not only indiscriminately genocidal, but also suicidal and omnicidal, capable of destroying ourselves and life as we know it on planet Earth? And so, yes, we lament. And we release our needed tears because we must not go numb. We must not become cynical or despair. As Washington Irving wrote long ago, there's a sacredness in tears. They are not the mark of weakness, but of power. They are messengers of overwhelming grief, of deep contrition, and of unspeakable love. But we need not only to sorrow, we also need to reach towards tomorrow and look beyond our fears. This is what you're doing already tonight by your presence here. You are the sign that we have not forgotten. You are the sign that hope is stronger than fear. You are the sign that the scourge of nuclear weapons will one day be delegitimized. And you are the voices that collectively will swell to an irresistible global chorus demanding no more nukes. This chorus is already beginning. Have you heard it? Time and again in the last 10 years, I've learned of yet another group somewhere in the world that's saying no to nukes of hazard. There are hundreds of such groups representing millions of members. Their work is often unseen, but there's a tipping point a-coming. A bit later tonight, you'll learn more about the recent United Nations Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, adopted by nearly 2/3 of the United Nations member nations. This treaty, and I quote, categorically prohibits the possession, use, and threat of use of nuclear weapons. Can I hear a yes? Yes! Nuclear weapons are already immoral. When ratified by 50 nations, this treaty will make them illegal. Could it happen? Public opinion and civil society have already effected international bans on chemical and biological weapons, landmines, and cluster mines. One fine day, nukes will be tossed on this growing heap of abandoned weapons of mass destruction, of mass deception. Our challenge this evening is to add our voices to the growing hosts around the world insisting no more nukes. Where do we start? No more nukes. Where do we start?
No more nukes. No more nukes. No more nukes.
I feel like the president. I feel like Where do we start? How about with your friends? In recent weeks, I've asked many of my friends, many of them quite well informed, about, well, they've heard of the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, and none of them had. Yet this may be the most singularly important forward step in our lifetimes to stop the existential menace of nuclear weapons. Let's get the word out there. Civil society, that's you and me and groups like PeaceWorks and so forth, we can do what governments have failed to do. Historian Howard Zinn calls this a force more powerful, a grassroots effort that time and again has prevailed against all odds through nonviolent civil action. And guess what? Peace works. Like John Lennon, we need to imagine. Imagine a day when we invest more in peacemaking than in war making. Imagine a day when war and its weapons are done away. Imagine a day of true security when basic needs are met for all. Imagine that day foreseen by prophets Jimi Hendrix and Mahatma Gandhi, when the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. And imagine that glad day when our grandchildren ask, Grammy, why did we ever have war? Or, Grandpa, what's a nuclear weapon? Could it happen? Absolutely. Through acts of imagination, through acts of resistance, we are a force more powerful. Tonight, together and individually, may we courageously and tirelessly live and declare the message of peace, salam, shalom, towards fulfillment of the Hiroshima, Nagasaki pledge, never again. Can you say it with me? Never again. One more time. Never again. Amen.